Well, welcome to the Voice Summit and Demo Day. We've got 8 amazing companies who've been working hard with us at BetaWorks for the last 3 months. BetaWorks, ourselves, has been thinking about voice for a little while before that, and we'll get into sort of how we got here, what kind of brought us to this day. But before that, very importantly, I have a number of people to thank, without whom this day, would not be possible, would not happen. So, starting from the top, we have a group of amazing partners who's been working with us since well before we got started. We're just as sort of obsessed with voice as we were. GE, and I know Nancy's here, and I think a number of her team are as well. There she is. Thank you, GE. The Google Assistant team has been with us sort of from day one as we planned out this program. L'Oreal, and I know Rachel and Sam are here too somewhere, and Gunderson. And I think Adam and his team are here as well. And they were very generous, not only with sort of helping us set up the program, helping us with today, but also with their time. Our lawyers, Gunderson in particular, gave umpteen different sort of office hour sessions covering IP, deals, and are working directly with a number of the companies. So thanks to Adam and David from Gunderson. On that note of people giving their time, we had a litany list of dozens of amazing partners come through to the BetaWorks studio over the last 3 months. I'll just run through a few of them to give you an idea of the types of people that were so generous with their time. Starting with sort of the larger technology companies, Amazon, Microsoft, IBM, SoundHound, If This Then That, Snips, all helping us with sort of the core product and technology elements of building for voice. Also folks like Gimlet, WNYC, the New York Times, from the media world, and a number of co-investors that we know well from both the West Coast and East Coast. Homebrew, True Ventures, Greylock, Excel, Western Tech, who's here as well. ENIAC, LHV, Greycroft, BDMI, Tribeca Venture Partners. The list goes on, and it just speaks volumes to sort of the community around BetaWorks and in New York tech. So thanks to all those folks. Finally, on kind of the official partner list, I want to mention our co-investors in VoiceCamp. Lightspeed, Aaron, Alex, and Jeremy from their team were amazingly helpful structuring the program for the teams and working alongside of them. So thanks to those guys. Also Dave and the launch team. I know I saw Dave earlier. There he is. And finally, GGV, Hans and Robin. And okay, I'm halfway through the thank yous. Jesus. The Rubin Museum. Thanks to the Rubin Museum. I think you can already tell this is an amazing venue for an event like this. It really matches well with kind of how BetaWorks thinks of ourselves and sort of thoughtfully combining art and science. And hopefully this is an appropriate place to have an amazing and thoughtful day. I would also call your attention to, I had the brochure, but one of their exhibits right now is called The World is Sound, which we may or may not have curated, but take a look at the posters, and if you have time, it's up on the 6th floor. I think it's here until September. Okay, BetaWorks people. So the ops team, Nicole, Michelle, and Elisa, thank you so much. Without you guys, we would all look like imbeciles up here, so thank you. The studio network and family of companies that helped with the VoiceCamp teams, Josh, James, Dom, but also Kira from Catapult, Adam and Alex from Giphy, Daniel from Dexter, Sam, Greg, Quan from Poncho. So the family of BetaWorks studio companies was immensely helpful to the teams, mentoring them while they were at BetaWorks with us. Finally, the camp team itself. So Fahim, who's running around all day today, you will see him in one form or another. He's doing a myriad of different tasks. India, Delphine, who's up in the booth. They were the core team that just made sure that the experience for the VoiceCamp teams was amazing, and that today is also an incredible experience. And then finally, I just want to take a moment to thank the 8 companies themselves. We got into sort of the voice space and decided to do the camp program in voice, knowing there was something here, but not knowing exactly what kind of companies we would be able to work with. And through the course of looking for the teams, then actually, most importantly, getting them alongside of us, in the BetaWorks studio around the corner, it was just a pleasure every day to see them work with us, work with each other, and just grow as companies. So finally, thank you to those 8 teams with whom it was a pleasure to be colleagues for the last 3 months. And it won't be the last you'll hear from us. We'll be by your side going forward too. Anyway, so thank you to all those people, and if we could get one big round of applause for all of them, please. Okay, well with that, I want to give a bit of background, Matt and I do, to sort of how BetaWorks arrived at Voice and why we think it's interesting and why we think you should too. Hopefully it'll also sort of level set us for the day to make sure we all sort of are on the same page. So let's tee that up, and I'll invite Matt up here to start that off.
And thanks, Patrick, for really sort of spearheading the entire camp product within BetaWorks. I think it's we're all super excited to share with you guys what Pat and his team have worked so hard on for the last 3 months and before then. So I think, okay, that's good. Cool. So I'm Matt Hartman. I work on the BetaWorks Venture Capital Fund. And about a year ago, we did our very first accelerator at BetaWorks. And it was around conversational software and messaging. We called it BotCamp. And this year, we did a similar type of accelerator around verbal computing, voice interfaces, audio interfaces, called VoiceCamp. So one of the questions is, why VoiceCamp? And there's sort of two answers. One is around product, and one is around market trend. So on the product side, it's fairly utilitarian. It's actually, as many of you who are in the room know, it's more convenient, faster to be able to speak to a computer than to type. And on the other side, it's often more convenient to listen than to look. And so we had sort of this general view that was the case. And going back even a decade ago, when mobile started to move towards, probably in 2007 to now, people started moving towards using their phones in their pockets, but we went from typing with 10 fingers to typing with 2 thumbs. And so that sort of ended up being more complicated. And at BetaWorks, what we love to do is find opportunities where there's a new interface and you can build a new kind of native experience inside of there. And we started looking at that about 3 years ago. We did a seed investment in a company called Gimlet, podcasting company, in Anchor, which is the largest voice-first social network, and more recently in a company called Breaker, which is a podcasting app with a social media data layer on top of it. So at BetaWorks, we're also really excited about data, and I mentioned the second thing is the market trends. So what I was hoping to share with you all for the rest of this time is not necessarily why we chose VoiceCamp, but why we chose to do VoiceCamp now. And so I wanted to share a bit of data with you about why we think this is the time for voice, and there's such a massive opportunity. There's a number of interdependent trends that are growing, that are happening at the same time. And so I'm going to talk through content creation and consumption, and then sort of separately what I've been calling adoption surface area. I'll talk to you about what that means, and then about developers, and then Patrick's going to come back up and he'll share some details about sort of the data we're seeing on the ground from VoiceCamp. So this data, we call this sort of the content explosion. Up until the most recent number here is only 2015, so this data is now about a year and a half, 2 years old. There were 50,000 active podcasts, or 200,000 total podcasts created. 50,000 of them were still active. So on the content creation side, there was a lot to consume. But that's nice, not that helpful unless people are actually rapidly consuming this stuff. On the consumption side, 60% of people who listened to podcasts in a given week listened to at least 3 of them. And 20% of those people listened to at least 6 of them. So if you were listening to podcasts, you were doing it all the time. So that's also nice on the engagement side, but how many people is this really? And I know that investors like charts to look really up and to the right. I'm going to explain why this is very up and to the right, even though it sort of doesn't look like that. So in 2016, 21% of Americans had listened to a podcast in the last month. That's 53 million people. The year before, it was 17%. But the difference between 17% and 21%, that was actually a 23% growth. So as all of us start to feel these podcasts are becoming more popular, it's gone from sort of this niche thing to this mainstream media type. So on the ecosystem in the podcast side, there's starting to be something really interesting. That alone would be interesting. Separately, we have what I mentioned, I think about it as the surface area, but really what this is the percentage of time that you spend able to consume audio that is powered by the internet is increasing. And the reason that is because we have all these new devices. So right now, what this should show is we have 8.2 million Echo and Google Home devices in homes today. That's projected to be 30 million by the end of the year. So now you're at home, instead of having your phone over there and maybe not listening to a podcast, you're like, oh, well, I can just ask Alexa, or I can ask Google Home, or now I can ask the Apple speaker to give me content that is powered by the internet. Totally separate area
To use
is...
the Uber skill, you'll first need to link your account. I've
This
sent
is my
some
life.
information to your Alexa app to help you
So
get started.
totally separately, when you get into your car, you used to be able to listen to radio, but that's not powered by the internet. It turns out that not even today, not even half the cars that are shipped, so if you go down to 2017, not even half the new cars are considered connected cars. In 2018, that becomes 50-50. When you go to 2020, 95% of cars are going to be considered connected. So you're going to be able to use continuously your phone. You're going to be able to in the kitchen, be able to use compute there, compute in your home, go in your car, and now you're constantly using audio-powered products. So the last piece of this is the developer community. There are now, and Patrick's going to talk about this a bit more, there are 10,000 skills just in the Amazon Alexa device. The companies are sort of varying levels of transparent about how many skills there are, but that's sort of our estimate right now. And you can see, obviously, that's growing. And the last thing I wanted to mention, which I don't have a slide for because Apple doesn't share a lot of data, but if any of you have the AirPods, the behavior we're starting to see around these is that people leave them in their ear. So the default is you have this thing in your ear. So you're on a phone call, and then the phone call ends, and you don't take the headphones out, which means now Siri is right there. You can tap them, and Siri will answer. Google is starting to roll out its assistant to its different devices. Apple already has Siri in its devices. So there's a massive opportunity here for computing, so true computing to happen in the verbal layer, and it's everywhere. So it's ubiquitous. And you're going to hear a bunch of companies talk about the idea of multimodal and kind of ubiquitous computing.
Cool. Thanks, Matt. Great. And so as Matt mentioned, sort of the developer traction is starting. And while that's true, we're still in the very, very early days. And there's still a massive opportunity. What this chart shows is on the blue lines, devices shipped, and on the red lines, apps or skills available. And basically, at this time in the skill store, is only, for every one skill, there are 2,000 devices out in the world in the hands of people. At this time, comparatively with the App Store, that was only, per every app, 200 devices. So you can see the adoption ticking up, and you know, helped by the stats Matt gave, but really, there's still a lot more to be done here. And this would be interesting if there were only one platform. However, there are a myriad of available sort of connected voice services available to developers today. This comes from our VoiceCamp applicant pool, and you can see that most of the companies were developing A, for more than one platform, and B, across a number of different diverse voice services available. Just to give you a bit of a run through of what we saw with the companies who did apply to VoiceCamp, a healthy mix of consumer enterprise, software only versus having a hardware component. Sort of the application layer is the majority, or sort of over 60%. We also looked at enabling tech as well as even sort of platform or OSs themselves. And the final chart there on the left-hand side just shows the category, and my takeaway would be from this, it's a wide breadth of category types, including social, developer tools, health and fitness, news, productivity, et cetera. So really, across the board, we're seeing a lot of interest from developers here. So what have we seen over the last 3 months working alongside of the VoiceCamp companies, believing what we did coming in, but then actually being in sort of the trenches, building products with the VoiceCamp teams. So first, discovery. Just like chatbots, and Matt mentioned BotCamp and sort of conversational interfaces for us. Just like chatbots, the developers, the applications really have to figure out their own marketing and distribution. You'll hear from Earplay and Neuralex who'll have interesting things to say around that. In terms of voices, computer voice versus human voice, for certain things, computer voice will work. So if you're doing productivity-related tasks, the computer voice will get you where you need to go. John Dunn, Ag Voice, will both convince you of that today. But for entertainment or more interactive uses, you really need a human voice. Shine, Spoken Layer, and a number of the other teams will sort of put that to use. And finally, multimodal. Matt mentioned it a second ago. But as opposed to conversational chatbots and text, where sort of the context is in the conversation, with voice you really need a full product suite of other modalities, other contexts to help you along as you serve your customer or user. And Duo and Jovo are great examples of that. So that's kind of what we've learned so far, going back to last year until today. So hopefully that gets everyone up to speed with at least how we think about it. But to further the conversation, I'd like to welcome up John Borthwick and Chris Messina, who will explore a little more in depth of where we're going with voice. Thank you.